What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with a subscriber Q&A video. A lot of these questions, actually all of these questions, came from the graded Lando giveaway that I had a few weeks back, and I encourage folks watching this channel to add some additional questions in the comments to this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe, and I'll try to make this as regular as I can depending on you guys. You guys need to give me more content, and I would love to have some additional questions, no matter what it's about, whether it's about the graded figure industry, Star Wars in general, modern, vintage, bootlegs, whatever you want to talk about. Fire away with questions. But let's get to, I kept the list fairly small, but let's get to a few questions from the Lando giveaway. John McKeon asked, do you have any interest in collecting the Star Wars retro collection line? And their answer is obviously yes. You guys can see here a few of my ungraded items that I have. I've done videos on all three of these. Grand Moff Tarkin, who was the packaway in the Escape from the Death Star retro collection board game. We have the Luke Skywalker in his snowspeeder. That was a pack-in for the Hoth Ice Planet Adventure game. And I have that one graded already, but this is an example from inside the packaging, so it's nice to have both. And then obviously I have the Monopoly pack-in of the Remnant Stormtrooper from The Mandalorian. That one is still fairly new, and I've done videos on all three of these. I've included below some thumbnails, and I'll also include in the description to this video links to all three videos on those. So thank you for asking. Now, to speak more specifically to John's question, I'm not getting like Wave 1 and Wave 2 of the retro collection figures of vintage Kenner items. The ones where they've redone like Darth Vader and Stormtrooper and blah, blah, blah. I've got to cut it off somewhere, as I've mentioned before. I don't have a lot of room left in my collecting room, so I'm not getting those. But I am getting the Mandalorian wave that's coming out next year, the Wave of 7. I'll include a snapshot of that below. Obviously, other folks have covered that in more detail, but I did pre-order that. I'm excited about those. I am going to get those graded. I got collector grade versions of those coming from Big Bad Toy Store. I have no idea when they get here. Big Bad Toy Store tends to ship new releases a little bit later than those of you who pick them up in retail, so you'll probably have them in hand before I get them back from the graders. It's almost a certainty at this point, but I did pick those up, and obviously I had to pick up the Remnant Stormtrooper just to round out the Mandalorian-related retro collection figures, but I'm excited about those. I think they are great additions to the retro line, and I'm excited to get those. Mr. Galaxy ERK, he is a fellow YouTuber. Go check out his channel. He is a great friend of mine. He sent me as a gift, which was an insane gift, a semi-articulated Mexican bootleg squid head. I'll include a photo of that item in here below because it was just such an incredible gift. I got that one graded by Collector Archive Services earlier this year. And wow, I mean, just so generous of him. It's such a rare item. But anyway, Mr. Galaxy ERK, he asked me, what colors do I look for more often in bootlegs? I'm not buying a lot of bootlegs these days. I've got a pretty big collection of bootlegs. Not a lot of rare ones. There are many collectors out there with much more rare bootlegs than I do. But I do have a few lined up just to show some awesome color examples. I recently did get back this unarticulated squid head back from grading. But that's a good question, Mr. Galaxy. In general, I tend to collect bootlegs that are wackier. I love the crazy colors like this pink Klaatu, the unpainted blue Bib Fortuna, this Obi-Wan Kenobi Polish bootleg. There's just lots of great examples. You can kind of see some others here. I've got the blue Ninyum, and then a Mexican Greedo. I really enjoy the color variation in bootlegs, and for my buddy Lee collects just unbelievable static Polish first set and second set bootlegs that have some crazy colors. And in general, I like to get ones that do not closely match the vintage licensed figures. I just think it's cool to have examples of figures that catch the eye, that when people who maybe do not collect Star Wars or are not as obsessed with little plastic dolls like I am, when they walk into my collection room, they can see some kind of crazy items, crazy colors, but more so it's just for me. I love collecting these wacky colors, and it tells an important part of the vintage Star Wars toy story that I think a lot of collectors would benefit from having a few in their collection. And I've certainly got quite a few of them now in my collection, and I just think it's a really cool line. I have a passion for them, and I hope to add more slowly. It's going to be more of a trickle rather than a flood, like in 2019 when I bought almost exclusively bootlegs. But more of a trickle these days. I'm focused more on licensed figures these days, licensed variants, and mint on cards, things like that. But I really do think that they are a cool thing to collect, as you guys know. All right, next question. D. Lovink, thank you for watching. He asks, what's my favorite Star Wars movie? Also, what is the first Star Wars figure ever? And I think that for me, I'm one of the old school folks. I'm obviously older. I'm in my 40s. So The Empire Strikes Back is definitely my favorite of all of the Star Wars movies. I did like Rogue One a lot in terms of the new content, newer Disney-related content. I think Rogue One, although technically, in my opinion, it's not really a space opera. It's more like a Guns of Navarone type of war movie. But I thought that they did a great job with that one, and I really enjoyed it. In terms of my first figure, you guys are looking at an example of one. I specifically remember, I don't know how old I was. I want to say I was about 5. And I vividly remember getting, either for my birthday or Christmas, I can't remember, a Darth Vader. It was on an Empire Strikes Back card. I still have that today on card, but this is another example. This is my Hong Kong letter on the saber hilt, graded 85. But Darth Vader is my favorite character, as you guys know. You can see quite a few loose graded variants, baggies and bootlegs and things. But Darth Vader is my favorite character of all time. I think that he, in some way, flows throughout all of the different Star Wars movies and into even some of the TV shows. And I just think he's an incredibly complex character between Anakin and his conversion to the dark side. And the books do a great job of talking about a lot of that. But, in general, Darth Vader is my favorite character in all of Star Wars. And I'm only going on memory. Obviously, it was a long time ago, almost, 40 years ago. But I very specifically remember getting one when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And to this day, Darth Vader remains my favorite. So Joe Schmo asks, when I was a kid, one of my fondest memories is getting a Rancor monster around Easter time. I just think it was so different from all the other Star Wars accessories and playsets. Is there a figure or playset, any genre, that you fondly remember playing with as a kid? Well, let's take that in 2 parts. First, in terms of non-Star Wars, I definitely fondly remember playing with G.I. Joes and Transformers, He-Man, Mask even. I really enjoyed those lines. Blacked Out Ewoks and I had a live stream about non-Star Wars related toys that you guys can go look up on my channel. I did create a live stream playlist for some of the great playlists or great live streams I've done over the years. In terms of Star Wars related, it would have to be my Wampa. I still have my childhood Wampa, and amazingly, it's in pretty decent shape. I found this in my mother's attic one time, maybe a year or 2 ago, probably a little bit longer, but gosh, it's actually still in relatively pretty good shape. And so I've kept it, and my kids love it. And I mean, look at those hands. It's actually, the paint on it's still pretty good. So I must not have played with it too much, but I do have a fond memory of this, and finding it in my mother's attic was pretty awesome. Who knows? Maybe it was my brother's. I don't know, but I do remember playing with one, and this guy has a lot of sentimental value, and I pose him and I say, "Hey, how you doing?" to my kids sometimes, and so this is one that I really have a lot of fond memories of, and I really like Mr. Wampa. He got kind of a rough go of it with Luke and his lightsaber, but Mr. Wampa is pretty cool, and so I keep him in my collection room of graded items just as a nice memory. And so that's my answer to that question. Okay, now we got another one here. This is from Francis under the handle Wiznaki's family. I says, I love listening to you in my wood shop on the weekends. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You are the one that got me into collecting loose graded vintage Star Wars figures. Francis, please apologize to your better half whenever you get a chance. I apologize for getting you into graded items. I get that comment a lot, by the way, for those of you watching. I can't count how many times I've said, thanks a lot. My wife wants to kill me, or my husband wants to kill me because you've gotten me into graded items. But anyway, he asked, I was wondering if I put a light behind my graded figures for display, will it wreck them over time? That's a great question and something I've considered myself. I would say that if you do that, Francis, I would recommend getting ones that can turn on and off, either by hand or, have it wired into a wall-mounted switch somewhere. I would not leave lights on them all the time. I have no idea. I'm not a scientist as to whether it will affect these. These acrylic cases, unless they are archival or museum style, archival for AFA or museum style cases from collector archive services, they do allow some UV penetration. I don't know if lights that are undermounted or, fluorescent lighting, I don't think that technically really puts off any UV light, but maybe I'm wrong there. I'm not a scientist. I'm just an idiot collector. So you'll have to look that up on your own. But I would not recommend having permanent lighting all the time on. Ones that you can turn on and off to show off your collection to folks that stop by, or, if you're doing videos or whatever you want to do. I've thought about it for my backdrop back here, and I've got my figures displayed such that I think it would be cool to have some undermounted cabinet lighting that could turn on and off. I've just never gotten around to it. But anyway, the cases that are non-archival and non-museum style, they do allow a little bit of UV penetration. I think it's 67 to 70% UV resistant. The archival cases and museum style cases from the respective grading companies are 99.9% UV resistant. So I don't think it matters for those. But most of us don't have all archival cases. It's just too expensive. So I would not recommend permanent lighting. The second part to his question, he asked, how are you displaying your whole collection? Basically, as you see behind you with my Lukes and my Vaders, I have stair steps that were available from GW Acrylic. And I've got a number of different shelves in my collection room that basically have all of these stair steps throughout for my loose graded items. For my mint on card figures, as you've probably seen in some of my live streams, I just put those at a slant. But GW Acrylic, they do a great job. I'll put a link to their website in the description to this video, and I've included below an example from their website of the types of stair steps that I use. They hold AFA graded and CAS graded and UKG graded items perfectly. They sell different size steps depending on how many items you have, but that is who I use. I think they do a great job, and in general, they're pretty sturdy if you install the screws correctly. So I would recommend using them. They also do have acrylic cases. If you do not want to get a mint on card item graded, they do have sliding cases that other folks have covered in detail, like Jules Burt or Boss Bounty or Blacked Out Ewoks. They've all shown sliding cases on their channels that they use for mint on card items or for card backs. You've got a rare card back. They sell all kinds of different cases, even for play sets, mini rigs, all kinds of things. That's who I use. They pack really well. They arrive safely. They ship very quickly. I've had a great experience with them. So again, GW Acrylics, I'll include a link to their eBay store. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I want to get that clear. But I do think that they do a great job, and they do provide excellent customer service. So I will include a link in the description to this video. Dexter Kirby asks, appreciate the videos. It's always cool to see graded figures on display. Thank you, Dexter. My question is, as a new collector, I wanted to send the figures away for grading. Should I send them myself? Or I have a local shop that is a member that to certain grading organizations. Should I let them send them? And he says they have experience in discounted pricing and so forth. Okay, I'm going to go. I'm doing my pause. I'm doing a pause. This is my personal opinion on things. I would recommend only sending those items yourself. I would not have a third party submit items for you, even if there's a discount. You know, you can buy your own discount. You can buy your own membership if you do high volume grading like I do. That's something that I've considered to either AFA or Collector Archive Services. I've been members of both organizations in the past to get their discounts. But from my perspective, having a third party handle grading submissions is a bad idea. I don't care if you've known them all your life. If you've got a very rare item especially, it should only come from you. It should only go through one of the postal services that you hand deliver to them. For me personally, how I deliver items to the grading companies, I use now FedEx or UPS. I do not use USPS, the U.S. Postal Service, because what happened was I had a sealed Atari Jedi training simulator game that was really, really beautiful. It was a CIS or AFA 85 or 90 grade. It was mint, and I had not sent it in yet for grading. I paid a lot of money for it. I paid about $150 for it, which is, you know, that's pretty fair for what it was, but it got lost by the USPS. The U.S. Postal Service delivered it to the wrong address. I was able to confirm that because I had tracking on it. I had to go through them to get my money back, which they did give me because I insured it for full value. So I always recommend insuring the items for full value. I know many collectors who will ship thousands of dollars in items and say, nah, I never get insurance for my items. It's a waste of money. I'm calling BS on that. I'm telling you, I've lost items. I've lost many items. I've purchased a UKG 85 PBP Boba Fett for like $400 a couple years ago. It was immaculate. It got lost in shipping. It made it to New York City Customs and got lost by the USPS. I did get my money back because I had eBay protection. And I've lost the Atari game. I've had other items delivered to the wrong address by the U.S. Postal Service. So I no longer use USPS for anything that I submit for grading. I also recommend double boxing. I recommend getting full insurance with tracking. As I've said, I do expedited shipping. It costs more, obviously. It costs more to use FedEx or USPS, but I have never, since I've started using them, I've sent dozens and dozens of submissions across dozens of boxes. I've never had one single item not be delivered to Collector Archive or to AFA using FedEx or to UPS. So those are who I use, depending on how big the item is. For larger boxes, when I have like a big shipment of like 30 items, I use FedEx. For smaller boxes, I tend to use UPS, but I double box everything. I also bubble wrap and use packing peanuts, label everything correctly. I cannot stress it enough. I use insurance though. It's just no risk. There's no point in risking, especially if you got something rare. Now, again, if I got something common that's like a $50 single loose graded vintage Star Wars item, then sure, use USPS at your own discretion. But if you got something ultra valuable, which some of mine are, when I send them in, I don't mess around. I use FedEx or I use UPS. All right, so that's the end of my soapbox. But be very, very careful about who you use and how you pack and all that kind of stuff. Finally, Javier Chavoya, he asked, what are my top must-have buys on my list of graded Star Wars figures, both vintage and modern? It changes daily, Javier. I don't know the answer to that. If you're going to ask me right now in terms of vintage items, I'll do two parts. I'll give you a couple of vintage items and I'll give you a couple of modern. My goal for 2021 is to pick up a high-grade Blue Snags and a high-grade Yak Face, obviously loose-graded. Blue Snags, obviously, you can either get loose-graded or in a baggie. I'd probably go for a loose-graded item. Yak Face, there's no way I could afford a mint-on-card vintage Yak Face, so I'm going with a loose-graded Yak Face. Those are two of my very few loose-graded wants for next year. So that answers your vintage collection, or your vintage items. I don't know if it'll actually happen. It will depend on my job situation. It will depend on money. It will depend on a lot of things. But if one comes up for sale that's fairly priced or is at an auction, I'll give it my best go, and hopefully we can add one of those or both sometime this year. Those are definitely goals of mine for this year. It's kind of embarrassing that I don't have either one in my collection. I've come close a couple of times, either in auctions or on Facebook, but it just hasn't happened. But my goal is to get both of those at some point next year. In terms of modern items, you know, I've just started fairly recently collecting modern items like the retro collection and vintage collection. You obviously have seen some great carded examples and boxed items from that have been graded by Collector Archive Services or AFA. But I would say that in terms of modern, I've got two on my want list. One is probably not going to happen, and that's the VC20 Revenge of the Sith Yoda on the Canadian card back with the alternate Return of the Jedi or ESB picture. I think it's the Return of the Jedi picture. I'll put a thumbnail of an example of one. I do not have that one. I'd love to add it. This year alone, I got 3 vintage Yoda mint on card items. So it's a pretty awesome accomplishment, in my opinion. I went from 0 to 3 this year. 2 of them are still at grading. I will obviously show those when they arrive, but I do not have that VC20. They come up very, very irregularly. I've almost pulled the trigger on a couple of them, but I did not, either because of condition or because someone else bought them when I just didn't have the money lined up. You're talking about probably $400 to $500 US for one of those in high grade condition, and I just have not pulled the trigger on one, but I'd love to add one. The other VC related item that I'd like to get that is certainly attainable would be the VC17 of General Grievous on the foil card. I only want a foil card, and ideally unpunched, and I want it very mint. It just has not happened, but it's within my budget. You're probably talking $100 to $125 for one of those ungraded in mint condition. And I've seen a couple that I almost bought and just either passed because I was right in the middle of buying something else, or my pockets were dry, or someone else bought it before I could, or the condition just didn't meet meet my standards. It didn't meet the AFG standards for excellence. So, which sounds idiotic, I know, but I'm very picky when I do buy vintage collection items because I try to get them fairly high grade. So that one is one I think I will get this year. It's just a matter of timing and finding the right one. It hasn't happened yet, but that is definitely one. The VC17 foil chase card Ultimate Galactic Hunt General Grievous. That's one I definitely am going to get. And I'd also, as a corollary or as an honorable mention to Javier's question, I'd like to get the proof card too. So I've got a couple of awesome proof cards at grading. I think I've got 6 to 8 right now in grading that were all STCC kind of exclusive proof cards. And some of them are hot, super hot. So I've got those coming back. But I hope that answers your question. Now, as promised in the thumbnail, to this Q&A session, I did get a new item that I won in an eBay auction. It just arrived. It's sitting here, still taped. I very rarely these days for you guys subject you guys to me opening a boxed item back, that just arrived from the mail. I very rarely subject you guys to me opening it. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to clear this gigantic shelf of stuff, and we will do the unboxing right now, very shortly. So stick around. Give me 1 second. Okay, guys, we are back, and I did go ahead and take the tape off the box to speed up the process a little bit, since I know this video might be running a little bit long with the Q&A session. But this item just arrived from Mr. Mailman, and I thought we would do a straight unboxing to kind of finish off the video. My guess is most of you are not going to care about what this item is, but I know a few of you will. I know a few of you collect this line in the Star Wars. So let me go ahead and take this out of the box and show you what we got. For those of you who are into roided figures, the Power of the Force 2 line. This is another Power of the Force 2 Darth Vader. This is the 1997 release for him, and while this is not a typical normal Power of the Force 2 Vader, this is actually a fairly rare one. This is the Power of the Force 2 Retooled Shadows Darth Vader. And for those of you who like your action figures on steroids, this guy definitely is. Let me take him out of the poly bag, and we'll take a closer look at him. But the Retooled Shadows Darth Vader is actually very, very difficult to find. It was a exclusive found only at JCPenney. And here he is out of the poly bag. But how you know that this is the Retooled Shadows is that this one features... let's see if we can get to focus. This one features a slightly different shape to the cape that kind of curls out. This figure first appeared in a 2-pack with Prince Zizor. I think that's how you pronounce his name. It was a 2-pack Shadows of the Empire with a comic on the card. I'll show that in the lower right-hand corner. But this figure first appeared in that 2-pack, and then they repurposed a number of these molds of the Darth Vader for single-carded figures. And it's always going to be collection 3, as you see up here. And it has this kind of strange shape to the cape, whereas the normal capes do not have that curl at the bottom. So this was only available at JCPenney. I did find some other really interesting information about this figure that I will put together in another video here soon, along with my 4 other graded Power of the Force 2 Darth Vaders. I've got several that are autographed, a couple of other different variants, transition tray, autographs, things like that, removable helmet. But this is a very difficult one to find, as others will attest to, like the Blacked Out Ewoks. He and I both know this figure very well, and I've missed the last few that have come up for sale, either in the groups or on eBay. And not many of these come up. Not many of these come up. I'd say maybe you might see 2 or 3 of these come up for sale a year, at least on eBay. And I missed the last one that came up, but luckily I was able to pick this one up at an eBay auction, and this one was fairly competitive, and it did come back with a great score. Retooled Shadows pose, 85 plus. The card got a 90. The blister got an 85, and the figure got a 90. So very, very high score for this Retooled Shadows. And this department store exclusive Vader, it's easily much more difficult to find than even the transition tray, where it comes with a smaller saber inside the longer tray. Those are pretty highly sought after as well, but this one is way more rare to actually see come up for sale, much less in such high grade condition. I looked at the AFA population report, and there's only one AFA 90, and there are 3 AFA 85 pluses, at least when I checked it a few weeks ago. I'm not sure if it's updated or not since then, but one of the highest graded examples in their database. But a really awesome item, and like I said, I'll be putting together a video later this week with some other kind of information about this figure that I found that I found interesting. This example has a ridged bubble around the entire front of the bubble. It's got a little ridge, and I'll go into more detail about that in my next video. That is it for this Q&A session. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, if you like this video, please do like and subscribe for future content. And if you want to see more Q&A sessions like you saw in this video, please send your questions my way. It could be about anything, and we'll make it a regular occurrence to the extent that you guys want to. Thank you again for watching, and I look forward to being back soon.